Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special Coaches Series, a new SSN 24/7 exclusive show where we profile head coaches of varsity sports around Michigan State University. Today, we are honored to have softball head coach Jacquie Joseph joining us. Since taking over the Spartan program in 1994, the coach has become the winningest coach in program history, guiding MSU to 588 wins and 4 NCAA regional appearances. Coach, thank you for joining us today on this new Coaches Series. We appreciate you're the very first one.
Awesome. I'm going to set the bar high. My goal is to set the bar very high.
I have no doubt in that.
Okay.
I want to start off talking to you today about how you got to Michigan State. It's been a long road. You just finished up your 22nd season, I believe, as softball coach here. But give us a thumbnail sketch of how you got here, how you got into softball, things of that nature.
Well,
what's your story?
I'll give it to you real quick, okay? Born and raised in Flint, Michigan. And, just grew up in the city and playing in the streets. Didn't play my first organized sport till 7th grade JV girls basketball.
Okay.
I was terrible at it. You should know that. And anyway, I was fortunate enough to play at Central Michigan University for a Hall of Fame and Olympic coach up there. And while I was there, I studied business administration. I thought I wanted to work on Wall Street, so I studied business and management and economics. And then when I graduated, the coach asked me to stay on and be a graduate assistant. And back in those days, there were really no full-time assistants. For the most part, we were all GAs. And so I became a graduate assistant and got my MBA. And back then, really, you couldn't really make a living in coaching softball for the most part. It was not the sport or game that it is today. So when I was done, a friend of mine had gotten the job at Indiana. She'd become the head coach at Indiana, and I'd known her for years through camps and clinics. And she called me and asked me if I wanted to be her assistant coach. So the very first full-time job I took was to become an assistant coach at Indiana University. I was there for one season and applied for and got the job at Bowling Green State University in Ohio. And I became the youngest head coach at Division I in that year at Bowling Green. Had 5 wonderful years at Bowling Green. Really loved my time there. Learned a ton, had tremendous mentoring from other coaches and administrators there to help me grow and learn. And it just happened that the year that we won the MAC championship, the job at Michigan State had opened. And throughout the course of my coming up through the ranks, I had become close with and connected to lots of folks here in East Lansing. And, basically had done every single thing in my career, whether it be attending conventions in the College World Series and, choosing mentors and learning and growing to be in a position to get the job at Michigan State. Every single decision I had made coming through, starting when I, became a GA at Central Michigan, was if I was going to choose this, I was going to go all in. And I was just very, very fortunate that Michigan State hired me. I was hired by a gal named Marilyn Dean Baker, and she was only athletic director here for a very short time. 6 months, but during her tenure, she hired Greg Ianni and myself, and so we're, in addition to several other people, but we're the last 2 survivors. So I'm very, very, very proud and fortunate and grateful to have been given that opportunity, and here we are 22 years later, and I'm hoping for many more.
Can you believe it's been 22 years? I mean,
No.
Yeah, that's a long shelf life
No.
for a coach
Yep.
in any sport.
Yes, I've been very, very fortunate. I've just been I've made great relationships and had great support throughout. When you make these decisions and you move through your career, but when you look at the just unprecedented success that Michigan State athletics is going through right now. You look to some of the stability. I mean, Mark Hollis has been here a long time, and President Simon has been here a long time, and Greg Ianni, and a lot of these folks. So I think stability is one of the reasons. And it's not just me. I mean, our women's gymnastics coach has been here longer than I have. Our women's soccer coach has been here longer than I have.
Wrestling coach, Coach Minkle.
Yep, our wrestling coach. And so there's just such a great core group of coaches that care and support about each other, all the time. I mean, it's not just a catchphrase or cliche. It's true. And so, and even Coach Izzo was here when I first got here as an assistant. So, just a lot of great people, and I've been just very, very fortunate.
And you touched upon the importance of having all the coaches together on the same page and, cheering each other on. I mean, that speaks volumes for a university, and that's what you want, and that for sure has been built here for quite a while now, with the names you just mentioned.
Absolutely.
Being the core group of people.
And it's not easy. I mean, it's easy to be short-sighted in athletics right now. It's very much a what have you done for me lately profession in general, and the pressures on certainly some of the higher-profile coaches are much higher than ours. But, it takes perspective and true leadership to be able to evaluate big picture. And, our people, athletic director Mark Hollis, and our president, they are big picture thinkers. And, I'm certainly looking forward to rewarding them with more success, certainly from our program.
You mentioned when you talked about this that you were a basketball player, right?
I played a little basketball, played a little volleyball.
Play a little basketball. Now, what position did you?
Terrible. I played the position of awful.
Awful?
I was.
Well,
you're
not the only one.
What's the position in hockey that the guy just goes in and commits? He's always in the penalty box. The guy that just is the enforcer.
Enforcer?
I was a little bit of an enforcer on the basketball court. Coach Izzo would have liked me. I could box out and rebound, and I certainly was scrappy.
You need that, right?
I was very scrappy, but I was certainly not very talented.
So what got you into, did you play softball at all, or what got you into the softball?
Yeah, I played a little baseball on the street,
okay.
With the neighborhood boys, like a lot of us did back then. And then my first experience in softball was I tried out for the girls' varsity team in high school. That was the very first organized softball team I played on. And then I played women's ball in the summers. Today there's a very organized youth sport down to the 8U level. When I was coming up, there was none of that. You just played, and then you played what we called women's ball. The ASA women's major open division was like today's version of professional softball.
Okay.
So I played that pretty much, through every summer, starting as early as my sophomore year in high school. And then and then back in the day, you could try out for colleges. So right. I drove to Central Michigan and tried out for the team. They had these open tryouts where you didn't even have to pick your school first. You could try out in August and then decide where you wanted to go. So it was much different than it is today. I tried out, and I interestingly enough, I was cut my freshman year, and I was devastated. I mean, just devastated because it was, at the time, what I thought I was supposed to be doing. So I went to see the coach, and I said, I'm going to play here. What do I need to do? Tell me specifically. And then I played all summer long and worked on those things, and then tried out again the next year and made the team and started every game for 4 years and never looked back. So it was an interesting path, and one I think that made me much more grateful and tougher for having it, because I really wasn't recruited. I was recruited by Eastern Michigan a little bit, and recruited by, ironically, Michigan a little bit. But like I said, back then it operated much more like the beginnings of a club rather than the way it is now.
And we've talked about this before. Recruiting has definitely changed throughout the times here since you began here. When you recruit, what are some of the traits? Obviously, you look for the physical ability. Mentally, you look at. But what are some of the other traits that you look at in a player when you decide, okay, this is a person we could really go after? What are some of the intangibles, I guess is a good word, that you look for when you're recruiting players to come here?
Well, first of all, sorting through all those things you just went through very quickly is actually not that easy. I mean, you've got to try to find, number one, somebody who can make your team better. A lot of people have the perception that, they'll watch a team play and they'll say, well, she could play for that team or whatever sport it is. And it's like, we're not recruiting to stay the same. We're recruiting to get better. So you're looking for those physical traits. The biggest, strongest, fastest, most skilled, most versatile kid you can find that you can also get. There's no point in spending time on someone who's automatically narrowed to UCLA, Florida, and Alabama, or that's just a waste of your time. You're looking for kids that, are potentially going to be a good fit. And so you narrow that way. And then when you get to the intangible part, like you said, when you get them to visit, that's when you spend your real quality time with them. Conversations over a meal, conversations in your office about what are you really looking for. And now, because you're recruiting freshmen and sophomores, those conversations are with the family a lot, with the parents. And you can pick up things from parents right away that are either show you great fit or show you red flags. And so it's imperative now that you make as few recruiting mistakes as possible because, you're likely going to live with that mistake for 4 or 5 years, and it can really hurt you. So all of those things are important. A lot of times, through the phone calls for the club coach, the phone calls with the high school coach, you try to gather as much information as you can about character, about academic preparation. But then it's the final thing is when you get them here to campus and you get an opportunity to really visit with the family that you make that final determination of I'm going to offer this one or I'm not going to offer this one.
How do you manage a program? What are some of the great things about it? And what are some of the more tougher things to do to manage a program at D1 level as a whole?
Well, I think first and foremost, don't try to do it alone. I mean, management a program of this size with the number of players, the number of the budget, what have you. First and foremost, the most important thing you do is you hire staff. Yeah. And you hire people that, make you better and yet are fiercely loyal to you. So you manage, the first thing you do is you hire your staff, and then you assign and you delegate and you let them do their job in a way that makes you better to do the things you do best most often. The mistake I think people can make is if you find yourself spending time on things that is not very, is not very productive. You have to let people do their jobs to help you do your job best. And then, there's a long list of things. First and foremost are the needs of the student athlete. But at a school like Michigan State, we've got tremendous support staff here. So, first and foremost, the academic support of the student athlete is the most important thing. Getting them in, integrating them into the campus, getting them into the courses they need to be in. Those things are all managed by Jim Pignataro and his staff at Student Athlete Support Services. If those things are taken care of first, you reduce stress on the player. And so I'm trying to make sure that everything in their life is organized and taken care of so then they can be their best on the field. And, of course, we have people that manage the strength program, people that manage the athletic training program, so that, the player, when they show up at the field, can be at their best on the field. And then, obviously it's the day-to-day operation, but there's phases of the program. You've got your fall ball and your fall competitive season. You've got your off-season and your off-season training regime. And then you've got your preseason and all of the travel that's involved. You've got your non-conference, and then you've got your conference and your season, and then, God willing, you've got your postseason. So It's a big deal. It's a big operation, but being organized, having the right people help you, letting them do their job.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all very important factors, I think, in having a successful program.
So as you said, delegating is maybe one of the big things that you have to have.
Big thing, yeah. Yep.
Is there, and you've coached a ton of players, you've had a bunch of coaches here, is there a player or a coach or a moment, I'll even throw that in there for you, and you've seen a lot, that has influenced you personally in a positive way since your time here?
Well, two things come to mind right away. In 1976, the women's softball team here won a national championship.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, if you can imagine 1976, there was women's sports. It was just like, not even a club. It was below a club status. Mm-hmm. And so when I got the job here, the very first thing I set out to do was honor those women who played in 1976. And
mm-hmm.
through the support of our department, we were able to bring back that team and buy them championship rings and retire the jersey of one of the greatest, if not greatest, player that ever played here, Gloria Bexford. And getting that project done will go down as, I think, one of the things that brought me the most joy mm-hmm. and sort of completed a circle, did something that was undone, if you will, number one. Number two, and it wasn't something that brought me joy, but taught me a phenomenal lesson, was when my really close friend and assistant coach Charles Fobbs passed away. Mm-hmm. That was one of the most important life lessons for me. There was through that tragedy mm-hmm. and adversity, I learned and grew, as a human being, maybe as much as I ever did. I lost my father when I was only 25, so that was a significant moment in terms of just appreciating sure. and understanding what's important in life and getting your priorities in order and blah, blah, blah. But then this shook me to a different level. Being an adult and seeing how cruel life can turn. It made me, and I'm sure my players would probably disagree with this, a much more compassionate and different coach than I had been even before. So those are some things that stick out in terms of, things that really mold you into the coach and the person that sure. that you're trying to be. I mean, I'm always a work in progress. I mean, I'm still hugely bothered by the fact that we are not more successful on the field. Mm-hmm. That is what keeps me awake every night, and yet I'm unwilling to lie, cheat, or steal to do it. So mm-hmm. I think we're gonna do it. I think we're on the cusp, and yet it can't happen soon enough for me.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, you've probably been asked this quite a bit, but I'm going to kind of give you an open forum. I'm going to give you a basic question. If you could change college softball for the better, I know that's a wide variety of things I'm sure that you have thought about or even talked about. What are some of the things that you think that need to be done for college softball to take maybe that next step or that next level? Because it has grown quite a bit over the past 5 to 10 years.
Well, right away, we've got to address the issue that has really come up this year more than ever in terms of runs scored. And this might sound crazy to the average fan, but the pendulum has gone from where no runs were being scored in fast pitch softball mm-hmm. to now where the scores are ridiculous. I mean, we're talking double-digit scores mm-hmm. on offense. The bat is too hot, the ball is too lively, and then the unintended consequence is the game is now going closer to 3 hours. Mm-hmm. So we've got to have some conversations about creating balance back in the game. Any great sport has balance between offense and defense. And when any one side gets too big, you've got to tweak things to come back to where it needs to be. Right now, we had a situation where we had no offense. As we sit here now, we've got 3-hour games, 3.5-hour games, because we have literally 15 double-digit runs scored. And then we've got the stupidity of a rule like the 8-run rule, which
I was going to bring that up to you.
No sense at all that we're going to sell out a stadium like you're at Alabama. They sold 4,000 tickets. You're on national television, and we stopped the game at 9-1. I mean, you can only look to this year's Big Ten championship, Michigan at Minnesota, and Minnesota sold out their field. They're on TV, and 2 of the 3 games were stopped at 9-1. It just is silly. And so we've got to continue to tweak and manage rules, playing rules that keep the sport, healthy and strong and in line with the needs of both the student athlete and TV's needs. So that's number one. Number two, we've got to get somebody's attention about some of the NCAA rules that are just really, really not healthy for any young athlete in any sport. The early verbal problem. What we're calling now the poaching problem, where you're having big schools poach small schools' best players because there's no transfer restrictions. Anybody can just quit and transfer with no liability because everybody has to give a waiver or you're painted as the devil. So there's no, but it works both sides. I mean,
Sure.
You force a 15-year-old to make a verbal commitment. Well, it's hardly unfair to them or their family to hold their feet to the fire when they're unhappy after 1 year, certainly with the number of coaching changes you have. So it's a complex issue, and yet we've got to do more to address it because it's not right that a player is all conference in a mid-major conference, let's say, hits 500, that coach and that school invested in them, and then the big school comes in and just simply recruits them away after they're already a 4-year school. That's wrong. And it's going on, and we've got to put some things in place that both respect and honor the needs of the student-athlete while you understand that a lot's at stake now, and so people are going to do that. There are unscrupulous coaches and players in schools, and so if you're paid to win, you're going to do it.
All right, we're going to end this very first coaches series with head coach Jacquie Joseph of the MSU softball team. Coach, what is the future of the Michigan State softball program? If you could tell the fans a couple of things, what to look forward to.
Well, I'm going to say it's so bright, I'm going to put my glasses on.
I was going to say, your future is so bright.
It's so bright. You're blinding me. Hang in there, fans. We're going to be there. We're going to be there right away in next year in March, and we're going to have a major facility upgrade. We're going to heat our infield, and that's going to help us immensely with getting on the field sooner. So lots of great things happening, and I'm super excited about it.
We are here, too, at the Spartan Sports Network. It's been a great relationship with the softball program. We can't wait to get started next year and continue it into the future. We look forward to it. Coach Jacquie Joseph, I want to thank you for joining us today for the first episode of the Coaches Series. We got this. Oh, you set the bar so high.
Okay,
I don't even know if Michael Jordan can get over it.
I like that. I like the way that sounds.
All right, it sounds good. Thank you very much, Coach, for joining us. We appreciate it, and we look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you.
All right.